Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about some hints and tips about playing Empires of the North. I really enjoy this game, it's really fun, but sometimes I've noticed after I played a few games that I was forgetting some things and doing things not quite right, so here are some hints that might help you in playing the game. Now the rulebook is nice, but you may want to go onto Board Game Geek and check out the FAQ for the latest updates. Here is the general layout that it will be typical for one of the games. So here are all your wooden pieces, of course, and your hand that you'll be drawing from, and there's the tableau that you'll build. Now, an interesting point here is that I tend to put the feature cards on the left because features are different than actions. So as you notice, this says each time you conquer, gain a point and a gold. So you can actually conquer multiple times during your round. So this card can be used multiple times. This one, on the other hand, says spend a worker to gain an axe or a fish and a point. But when you do that, you're supposed to turn it all the way over, but I'll just kind of turn it a little bit to save space. But once I've used that, I've exhausted it, so I can't use it again unless some card says that I can unexhaust it. Because of that, I tend to put the features over to the side so that I can easily check these every time I do something. So every time I conquer, I want to check somewhere, and just so that I don't have to look all over the place, I keep the feature cards on the left side. Then over here are the nearby and distant islands. Now here's a simple, interesting trick that I just thought about the other day, and I don't know why I've never thought about it before. The island cards only have a few of them. There's 12 for the nearby islands and 10 for the distant islands, and so it's sometimes hard to shuffle. Now you can shuffle like this, of course, but I just thought about, you can just deal it like you're dealing to people and just kind of randomly go to different stacks, and then when you collect them together, they're all shuffled. So that's an interesting tip that might be helpful to you. Here's another hint that might help you during play. Usually I have my resources, the bank of resources on the left, and I keep all of my resources on the left-hand side so I can just take them out and put them back in. But I keep my workers on the right-hand side. Why is that? Because, again, throughout the game I'm going to be putting things in and taking things out of the bank. I don't want to accidentally take one of my workers and put them in the bank. And that does happen. So that's the reason I keep my workers on the right-hand side, so it's harder for me to accidentally make a mistake and put a worker away and lose a worker. So here's one of the biggest situations where I was doing something wrong, and it really affects your score here, is that when you have a field, it says construct to build. I was actually taking my pawn, and when I did a construction, I constructed the field. And in addition, I didn't even take the goods once I put the field out there. I thought you had to build the field, and then later on you could harvest to get the goods. So the first point is, whenever you build a field, make sure you get your goods. The other thing, of course, is even if you have two cards and even if they're the same kind, you can't build two fields at the same time or use two boost cards. The other key point is this statement, construct to build, doesn't mean that I use the construct action to construct this field. What it means is I use this construct action to construct some other building, for example here the Priest of Thor, and then once I've constructed that I can actually put out the field and of course collect the goods. Now this same kind of idea applies not only to the fields for construction but also for the boost cards for things like sail to play and populate to play. Now it's probably more obvious that these other cards you do some other action and then you get to do this as well. With the construction, because it said construction, it just kind of seemed like I was supposed to use a construct action in order to construct, but that's not how it works. Another thing to be aware of with this, the field cards, is that when it says construct to build, it doesn't mean that you've built something else and then you can play this. You actually have to use a construct action. So one of those actions is the construct action here on the action tile. The same thing is true for the boost cards. You must do an action in order to play these. So one of those types of actions is actually playing one of these tiles, but cards can also give you that kind of action. For example, the small port here allows you to sail. Notice that the word sail is in all capitals, and that means it's an action that can be used to play a boost card. And over here we have the Fairy Island, and it also has the Harvest action. It has an actions that can be used to play boost cards. Now, the other thing to be aware of is the order in which things are resolved. So in this case, we're going to talk about populating. So here we could use a populate action, or we could, if we had this island, we could spend a sheep to populate as an action. And when we populate, if we have this boost card, we could populate to play this and gain a ship. So the way it would work is first you declare the action that you're going to do, such as spend the sheep to populate or play the pawn to populate. But before you actually populate, you then, so for example, what we will do is we will say we're going to populate. We declare what we're going to do, and then we play our boost card and resolve it appropriately, and then we would populate or resolve our initial action. One other point about fields, suppose that I have this upgrade field, this Salmon Fjord, and to play this, I place it underneath a field that already exists, but it has to be the same type. And when I collect the goods, I only collect goods for the upgrade. I don't gain 2 fish, I would only gain 1. Now that's at build time. Of course, when I do a harvest action, I will gain 2 fish. Another point to be aware of is the move action. So this island allows me to move my clan pawn to an adjacent action tile. That doesn't allow me to activate the new tile. So that card would allow me to move my pawn to the other tile, but it wouldn't allow me to populate in this case. However, of course, if I use my apple to actually move, it would allow me to activate that action. Now, why would I want to do that? In the solo game, I might want to do that because I may want to harvest in the next round, so I don't want it to get flipped over. Another reason that you might want to move it is I may actually want to construct. So I do a harvest, and I can't construct just by using my apple. But Jurassic Island will allow me to move over one, and then I could use my apple to move over, flip it over, and construct. Now here's another little tip. When I first started playing, I always thought about doing mainly the harvest and sail, and occasionally doing construct. And so I thought that I would populate all my resources with the harvesting, but actually you can think of pillaging as a kind of harvesting action. And if you think about it, even the nearby islands, you get 3 resources or 2 resources and a point, and the far islands, distant islands, you can get more. The other thing is that don't neglect doing the populate and explore. That can really help you in your game. So the final 2 things that I'll talk about is gold and axes, or raise tokens. Gold is really nice because it allows you to substitute for any resource, but you can't use gold to substitute for a raise token or for your workers. Now at the end of the game, the new rules in version 1.3 of the FAQ says that the raise tokens actually count as a point at the end of the game. So there you go. There's a few tips about playing Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North. I hope that was helpful. It definitely was some things that I had some trouble with when I was playing the game, but I hope that helps you, and enjoy playing Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North.